Honestly, I never thought I'd be the guy pouring his heart out on a relationship advice for him. But here we are. I guess I'm looking for advice, or maybe just a place to get all this crap off my chest. I don't know anymore. My head's been spinning for weeks now, and I'm just trying to make sense of what's happened. To give you some background, I've been married to Jessica for 5 years. We met back in 2016 through mutual friends at one of those casual get-togethers. The second I saw her, I was hooked. Jessica had this effortless confidence that just drew people in. She didn't have to try to impress anyone. She just was. I'd dated before, sure, but there was something different about her. She didn't play games. She told you what she was thinking, what she wanted, no sugarcoating. It was refreshing, and I thought I'd finally found someone who was real. The first few years of our marriage were good. Not perfect, but what is? We weren't the type of couple that was all over each other, but we had this steady, comfortable rhythm. We had each other's backs. Or at least, that's what I thought. Recently, though, things have been off. And I'm not talking about the usual relationship bumps. I'm talking about this slow, creeping feeling that something isn't right. It's hard to pinpoint when it started, but I can tell you that it's been building for months. Little things here and they're starting to change, and at first I didn't think much of it. You get busy, life gets hectic, and you figure things will snap back to normal eventually. But they didn't. Jessica's been working in real estate for the past few years, and if you know anything about that industry, you know it's been crazy lately. She'd tell me about long days dealing with difficult clients, market shifts, and how stressful it was to keep up. I try to be supportive, listening to her vent, offering to help with things around the house, so she could relax when she got home. We'd joke about how once she closed some huge deal, we'd finally go on that vacation we've been talking about forever. But even in those moments, I could feel a distance growing between us, and I couldn't figure out why. At first, it was just small things. We used to have these little routines, texting each other during the day, having dinner together, watching Netflix on the weekends. But slowly, those things started to disappear. She'd come home late, saying she was exhausted, and she'd head straight to bed or sit in the living room, scrolling through her phone. If I tried to engage, she'd seem distracted or irritated, like I was bothering her. I didn't think much of it. People get busy, right? I'm not the clingy type, and I figured she just needed some space. But it kept happening. More late nights at the office, more excuses for why she couldn't hang out or spend time together. And then there was the phone. She's always been attached to her phone like most people, but lately it's been on her constantly. She's always texting someone, but the second I look over, she angles the screen away from me. If I ask who she's talking to, she gets defensive. "It's just work stuff, Dave. Why are you being weird?" She'd say it with that exasperated tone, like I was crazy for even asking. I wasn't trying to accuse her of anything. I just wanted to know what was going on. But every time I asked, she'd blow me off or act like I was being paranoid. I started noticing other things, too. She was always a bit moody, part of her charm, I guess, but lately it's been like she's on a hair trigger. The smallest things set her off. If I asked for help with something around the house, she'd snap at me. If I tried to plan a date night, she'd complain she was too tired. Even if I just wanted to sit next to her and watch TV, she'd sigh and say she needed space. The worst part? I could feel her slipping away, and I had no idea how to stop it. First, I tried to chalk it up to work stress. Her job's demanding, and I know how much pressure she puts on herself to succeed. But after a while, that excuse started feeling thin. There was more to it, I just didn't know what. I kept trying to brush off the nagging feeling in my gut. Jessica had never given me a reason not to trust her before. We were solid, or at least I thought we were. But the way she was acting lately, it didn't feel right. I found myself paying more attention to the little things, like how she started dressing nicer for work, putting on makeup even when she said she was just meeting a client for coffee, or how she'd get texts at all hours of the night and would quickly flip her phone over when I was nearby. It's not like I thought she was cheating right away, but man, it was hard to ignore the changes. I remember one night in particular. She was working late again, which had become the norm. I was sitting on the couch, trying to distract myself with some mindless TV, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was up. My brain was on overdrive, running through all the ways she'd been acting strange lately. It was like I was seeing everything with fresh eyes, and all the pieces were starting to come together. When she finally walked in the door around midnight, she looked frazzled. Her hair was messy, And there was this weird energy about her, like she was trying to play it cool but was failing miserably. I asked how her client meeting went, and she gave me the usual vague answer. It was fine, just a lot to go over. But she was jittery, and I could tell something wasn't right. As she fumbled with her purse, her phone slipped out and hit the floor. And that's when I saw it. A hotel keycard. My heart stopped when I saw that keycard. It was one of those moments where time slows down, and your brain is trying to process what the hell is going on. I just stared at it for a second, not really understanding what I was seeing. I picked it up and asked, "What's this?" Jessica froze for a split second, then quickly grabbed the keycard out of my hand. Her face was calm, but I could see something flicker behind her eyes. "Oh, that's nothing. It's for a client. I had to meet them at a hotel to sign some paperwork." She said it so casually, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I remember standing there, my mind racing. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about the way she said it, the way she didn't even flinch, made my gut scream that she was lying. "A hotel?" I asked. "You needed a key card for a client meeting at a hotel?" She rolled her eyes like I was being ridiculous. "Yes, Dave. Real estate can be weird sometimes. Stop overreacting." I didn't know what to say. My mind was spinning, but I didn't want to push her too hard. I was scared of what I'd find if I kept digging. So I let it go, or at least I tried to, but that key card stayed with me. I couldn't get it out of my head. The next few days were torture. I couldn't stop thinking about that key card, and Jessica's casual explanation wasn't sitting right with me. I started noticing every little thing she did. How she'd leave the room to take calls, how she'd always seem distracted, how she'd brush me off when I asked about her day. It felt like she was hiding something, and the more I tried to ignore it, the more obvious it became. One night, after a few drinks to work up the nerve, I decided to confront her. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine when I knew, deep down, that something was seriously wrong. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone as usual, when I sat down next to her. I took a deep breath and asked, "Jessica, are you cheating on me?" Her reaction was immediate. She looked up from her phone, and for a second, I thought I saw a panic flash across her face. But then she laughed. "Are you serious? Dave, you've been acting paranoid for weeks now. What the hell is wrong with you?" I didn't back down. "I saw the messages, Jess. Between you and some guy named Eric. Don't lie to me." Her face went cold, the humor disappearing in an instant. She didn't even try to deny it. "Well, I guess now you know. That was it. No apology, no explanation." Just a flat, emotionless statement that shattered everything I thought I knew about her, that I was in shock. I'd always pictured these kinds of moments in movies, the dramatic confrontation, the tearful confession, maybe even some kind of twisted apology. But this was just cold. It was like she didn't care that she'd been caught, didn't care about the pain she was causing. And that's what hit me the hardest. The lack of emotion, the complete disregard for everything we'd built together. It was like I didn't matter to her at all. I felt like I was going to be sick. My hands were shaking, and I couldn't even form a coherent thought. I just sat there, staring at her, trying to wrap my head around what had just happened. I don't know how long I sat there, but it felt like forever. I was waiting for something, an explanation, an apology, anything, but Jessica just stared at me like she was bored. She had no intention of making this right. That's when it hit me. She didn't care. She had checked out of our marriage long before I even knew something was wrong. I couldn't hold it in anymore. All the emotions I'd been bottling up for weeks came rushing out, and I started yelling. I demanded answers, demanded to know how long it had been going on, who this Eric guy was, why she had lied to me. But she just sat there, watching me lose my mind without blinking. Finally, she sighed and stood up, like she had better things to do. "I'm not doing this right now, Dave. I don't owe you an explanation. You need to calm down." Calm down? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything, after destroying our marriage, she had the nerve to tell me to calm down? I could feel the rage boiling inside me, but there was nothing I could do. It felt like my whole world had collapsed, and the person I thought I loved was a stranger. After she walked out of the room, I knew I couldn't let it go. I couldn't sit there like an idiot while she continued to lie to my face. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I snooped through her phone. She'd left it on the kitchen counter, and my hands were shaking as I picked it up. Part of me didn't want to look, didn't want to confirm what I already knew. But another part of me needed to see it, needed proof that I wasn't crazy. I scrolled through her messages, and there was a thread with someone named Eric. It was worse than I could have imagined. Texts going back months, photos, plans to meet up, discussions about how to keep things quiet. And the worst part? They weren't even trying to hide it. Jessica had been talking to him about me, about how dumb I was for not figuring it out sooner. It was like she was mocking me behind my back, laughing at how easily she'd been able to fool me. I felt sick. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I had all the proof I needed, but somehow it didn't make me feel any better. It just made everything hurt more. I couldn't believe the woman I married, the person I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, could be this heartless that I waited for Jessica to come back into the living room. She was cool as ever, acting like nothing had happened. That only fueled my anger more. I stood up and threw the phone on the coffee table, the messages still open for her to see. I found the messages, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I couldn't trust myself to speak louder. Asterisk, I know everything. She didn't even look surprised. Instead, she rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. So what? You've been snooping through my phone now? Real mature, Dave. I couldn't believe her audacity. You've been cheating on me for months, and you think the problem is that I went through your phone? I was yelling again, but I didn't care. I was done playing nice, done pretending like I could save this marriage. She didn't flinch. I didn't cheat, Dave. We weren't even together anymore. Not really. Her words hit me like a truck. What the hell does that mean? It means you've been checked out for a long time, too. Don't act like everything was perfect. I wasn't happy. We weren't happy. I just found someone who makes me feel alive again. The way she said it, like it was no big deal, like it was my fault that she'd been sleeping with someone else. It made my blood boil. So you decided the best way to handle that was to go behind my back? To sleep with someone else and lie to my face for months? She shrugged. It's not like you even cared anymore. You were so wrapped up in your own little world, you didn't notice anything was wrong. I was speechless. There was no reasoning with her. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even pretending to be. And that's when I realized she wasn't worth it. I was wasting my time trying to get answers from someone who didn't give a damn about me. After that second confrontation, everything unraveled quickly. I moved into the guest bedroom that night, and Jessica didn't seem to care. It was like she was relieved that the truth was finally out, and she didn't have to pretend anymore. The coldness between us was suffocating, and the house felt like a prison. We started living completely separate lives under the same roof. She'd stay out late, barely speaking to me when she was home. Every time I saw her, I could feel the anger bubbling up inside me, but I tried to keep my distance. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break down again. It wasn't long before we started talking about separating. There was no point in dragging things out. She wanted out, and honestly, so did I. But that didn't make it hurt any less. Every time I looked at her, I thought about all the years we'd spent together, all the memories we'd made. How could it all just end like this? Once Jessica started packing her things, the reality of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. This was it. Our marriage was over. Everything we'd built together, the life I thought we had, it was all gone. And I had no idea what I was supposed to do next. The house felt so empty. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders of her, of us. The picture frames on the walls, the random knickknacks we'd bought on vacation, the gifts we'd exchanged over the years. All of it was tainted now, and I couldn't stand to look at any of it. But the worst part was the silence. After she moved out, the house felt like a ghost town. No more fights, no more awkward silences, just nothing. I missed her, as messed up as that sounds. I missed the person I thought she was, the life we used to have. I missed having someone there, even if that someone had hurt me more than I could ever put into words. That as the days went on, that sadness started turning into anger. I felt like a fool. How had I been so blind? How had I let her manipulate me like that for months? Every time I replayed our last few conversations in my head, I felt my blood boil. The fact that she wasn't sorry, that she had acted like I was the one who was checked out, it was too much to handle. I started getting angry at everything. The smallest things would set me off. A song on the radio, a text from a friend asking how I was doing. It all felt like a slap in the face, a reminder that my life had fallen apart and I didn't know how to fix it. I punched a hole in the wall one night. That's when I knew I needed help. Eventually, I reached out to a therapist. I wasn't one for talking about my feelings, but I knew I couldn't keep bottling everything up. I'd lost control, and I needed to get it back. Talking to someone helped. It didn't make the pain go away, but it gave me a space to process everything, to start understanding why it hurt so much and how I could start moving forward. Slowly, I began to piece my life back together. I went back to work, started hanging out with friends again, and tried to focus on things that made me happy, or at least distracted me from the pain. Jessica was still out there, living her life, probably with Eric. But I had to accept that she wasn't my problem anymore. Our marriage was dead, and I needed to let it go. That was easier said than done, but with time, it started getting a little bit easier to breathe out, of course. No separation is complete without the legal bullshit. We started divorce proceedings a few months later, and it was as messy as you'd expect. She wanted half of everything: the house, the savings, the car. And despite everything she'd done, I didn't have it in me to fight her on it. I just wanted it to be over. The process dragged on for months. Lawyers, paperwork, endless back and forths over who gets what. It was exhausting, and by the end of it, I felt like I had nothing left. But eventually, the papers were signed, and we were officially done. Now that the dust has settled, I've had a lot of time to think about everything that happened. I still don't understand why Jessica did what she did. Maybe she was unhappy and didn't know how to tell me. Maybe she was just selfish. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. She made her choice, and I have to live with the fallout. I've learned a lot through this whole ordeal, though. I've learned that you can't take people for granted, that even when things seem stable, they can change in an instant. I've learned that communication is key. Real communication, not just the surface-level stuff. And I've learned that you can't control other people's actions, no matter how hard you try. If you're reading this and going through something similar, here's my advice. Trust your gut. If something feels off, don't ignore it. Don't let someone gaslight you into thinking you're crazy for noticing the red flags. And most importantly, don't lose yourself in the process. It's easy to get caught up in the betrayal, the anger, the sadness. But at the end of the day, you have to take care of yourself. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck. But eventually, you'll get through it. You'll find yourself again. And one day, you'll realize that you're better off without someone who didn't value you in the first place.